Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football. Whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDP, we got you covered all year long. My next guest is a very, very good friend of mine. He was the very first guest on the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, the first voice that you heard that was not mine or Greg Penniman's. I'm talking about a guy who is he does a podcast, Fantasy First Rounders Live. He is an IDP analyst for Expand the Box Score. Also doing some data training with FTN data. My guy Chris Pinto, Aggie Kappa Sig on Twitter. Chris, what is up, man? Welcome to back.
John June, what's going on, man? Not too much right now here in Texas, just trying to stay a little cool. Man, like we were talking on Twitter, almost a year, if not a year, full circle almost. Gosh, we'll get into that in just a second. I gotta do my shout outs real quick. Shout out to Billy, Tom, and Ryan, my other fancy first rounders. These guys are putting in so much work for our second annual St. Jude charity event. It's a huge I guess Scott Fishbowl-esque tournament, right? Half the proceeds go to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Half the proceeds go to the winner. Last year was Rusty Meyer. So great job on you guys. Kickoff starts August 1st, so get your signups in. And like we were talking about earlier, John, like almost a year ago, how crazy everything has been, how we've all progressed. Absolutely love what you're doing. Always learning something from you. We'll talk about that later too, I'm assuming. But thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure, John. When we link up, man, you're one of my day ones, like you said, and we just click, right? And everything just flows. We could probably talk for, I can just talk for like an hour, so I know you could talk for a lot longer. We're going to get into my Houston Texans, though, and it's a little sore subject, but man, like you asked, we'll get into it. All I can say is everyone who's listening, I'm going to quote the All-American Julius Campbell, where attitude reflects leadership, Captain. Remember the Titans, talking to Gary Bertier. This show tonight, as most people, if you're a Houston Texans fan, or you think you're a Houston Texans fan, or you know the Houston Texans, it's a sad deal. We're going to turn it around, though, and I'm extremely excited to talk about this because my Houston Texans are on the up and up. We'll get into it here pretty soon, though, with John.
Oh, man. Chris, I was half dying over here, half crying, man. Had me all emotional and full of laughter, man. That's
what we do.
That's what we do, man. It's good to have you back, brother, man. It's awesome. We've just been interacting on Twitter, but I know I've done a couple live streams with you here and there, but to have this one-on-one time right here like this is awesome. We were supposed to start at a scheduled time, but we ended up starting 20 minutes after that scheduled time. So we could already kind of tell what kind of pod this is going to be. I'm just going to apologize to the listeners in advance if we go over the allotted 30 minutes of time.
30 minutes. I told my wife asked, "Hey, how long are you and John going to be?" I said, 90.
Well, for the sake of the listeners, let's not get it to 90.
We'll keep it short. I'll cut out half my notes.
We are continuing our divisional breakdowns here at Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast. We're talking about the AFC South. And as Chris mentioned, we're talking about the Houston Texans. And they're probably one of the saddest teams to talk about at this stage of the NFL calendar year. As I was typing up my notes, I was like, I can't believe I have to do a podcast on this team. But at least I got to do it with my guy, Chris, because if anybody can make this fun, it'd be you, Chris. So the Houston Texans experienced quite the disappointing season in 2020, and the tone was pretty much set in the offseason with the trade of all-pro wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins to Arizona in exchange for, catch this, David Johnson and a second-round draft pick. The Texans started out 0-4 with a tough schedule, thus firing head coach, general manager, and whatever the hell else he was in charge of, Bill O'Brien, after the 0-4 start. But it was too late, as they would finish 4-12, third place in their division. And it was a shame because quarterback Deshaun Watson was coming off statistically the best season of his career. The Texans would hire a new general manager in Nick Caserio from New England. They would hire a new head coach in Dave Culley, the wide receivers coach of Baltimore. And normally when a team is done as bad as the Houston Texans did in 2020, they get a high draft pick. But former general manager and head coach Bill O'Brien traded what would become the third overall pick to Miami for Laramie Tunsil. To make things worse, Deshaun Watson, amidst his legal troubles, has stated that he doesn't want to play for the Houston Texans anymore and has already requested a trade. A lot to unpack here with the Texans, Chris, but what are the vibes around Houston?
So, like I mentioned with Julius Campbell, right? Leadership starts at the top, right, and comes down. The Texans I've seen them from the inception, right? I saw Carr get drafted. I saw the sacks. I saw Arian. I saw Andre and Cortland Finnegan all growing up, right? Now, as a father and coming full circle in a year, right, with you, now I feel like I'm excited because now the Texans are rebuilding. This is a full rebuild from the ground up. We're talking from the GM down, right? First, you got Nick Caserio, right? This guy is a cut above the rest. And just like some of the other guys I'm going to talk about tonight, Nick Caserio won. A little bit about him, right? Obviously, he came from New England, right? 20 years essentially with them, assistant coaching staff, executive, scout, ended his career there as the director of player personnel. The dude is on fire, right? From an early age, he played quarterback. He attended John Carroll University where he played quarterback. He was a 3-time academic conference selection. And he did toss the ball a couple times to wide receiver Josh McDaniels, New England connection right there. In 2002, New England hired Caserio, and he just started being the jack of all trades, right? Caserio essentially was behind the scenes scouting, doing reports, player personnel here and there. Then he even, during games when he wasn't supposed to be there or supposed to be schmoozing, he was up in the press box with old Ernie Adams, researching game data, things like that, just doing as much as he can, kind of like old John June does behind the scenes that y'all don't see, but we all know about. Then, like I mentioned, he finished in 2020 as the director of player personnel. He gets hired now by the Houston Texans, who, like you mentioned with Deshaun Watson, Deshaun didn't want to play. Deshaun he's my heart, right? Like I love Deshaun Watson. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about Deshaun not wearing battle red. But they hired Nick Caserio to start from the ground up. You got to get the guys that are hardworking. You got to get a whole new tone, right? He goes and gets a Spartan, essentially, born out of Sparta, Tennessee. David Culley, head coach now. David Culley, the first African-American to play quarterback at Vanderbilt, which, if y'all don't know, is a Southern type school. The dude's thick skin for sure. And he was a baller there, right? Culley then worked up from the ranks of from college coaching across the board to gig him in 91 Texas A&M to be a wide receivers coach. Goes on to move to the NFL with the Bucks, goes to the Steelers. Then senior offensive assistant and wide receivers coach under Andy Reid, goes to the Eagles in 99, follows Andy Reid, then to the Bills in 18. Back to Kansas City, right, from 2013 to, I'm sorry, that was flipped. 2013-16 was with Andy Reid, finishes up with the Bills. Now he is with the Houston Texans. A tough-minded quarterback like that with your GM who is a quarterback, let's get a hard-nosed dude to come in and just be the player guy that we know and run this defense, set the tone. We're going to go get Lovie Smith, a native son of Texas. Give the juice to the Texas guys, right? Lovie is a player, coach, mentor, former NFL Coach of the Year. He's a 3-time All-State defensive end and linebacker, 2-time All-American linebacker under John Cooper at the University of Tulsa. Same thing as Culley, right? Ascended the ranks extremely quickly, became the linebackers coach for the Bucks back in 96 for Tony Dungy. With the help of Tony Dungy's tutelage, I guess is what you would say, and guidance, Lovie Smith helped make he helped develop what we know as Tampa 2. That was Lovie Smith. So you got to like that, right? 1996 to 2016, he was a favorite among coaches, fans alike, right, in the NFL. Now we get one more guy, right, for this coaching regime change, right? Let's go get Frank Ross. Not as much a known name, but if you were a game show fanatic like my wife, you know in 2008, he was on Deal or No Deal, won $14,000. So to be on a game show, win something like that, you got to have some sort of step in the tank, a little bit more connection, right? He also played at John Cooper University, where Nick Caserio played, right? He was a wide receiver, though. And he was also named captain and MVP of the Tazón de Estrellas, the Bowl of the Stars in Mexico City, Mexico, I believe in 2010, something like that. Went back to Carroll and coached, now with the Patriots in 2015 to 17 as a scout, more connections there. Went to the Colts, as my guy Billy will talk about tomorrow, most likely, now with the Texans. From the top down, I'm extremely excited what this regime is going to do and set the tone for the Texans. Like I said, a full rebuild. For football purposes, this is extremely exciting. As a fan, this is extremely exciting because we're at our lowest point. We lost Deshaun Watson, or we're probably going to lose Deshaun Watson. We lost DeAndre Hopkins and J.J. Watt. Like, what else can we do? We're our lowest point. Let's rebuild from the ground up. And you got to get these guys, are four pillars of the Houston Texans that are going to ascend us into the future.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I guess of the Texans fans that are left, I'm
one of them, and I don't care. I'm going to be there till I can't.
Yeah, you guys have no other choice but to be optimistic. But
100%.
Let's talk about the quarterback, right?
Sure.
Deshaun Watson, best year of his career in 2020, career highs in completion percentage, passing yards, passing touchdowns, total touchdowns, career best in interceptions. The dude was a stud, QB5 in total points at 23.1. But it seems like we can't count on him being here in 2021 with everything that's happening. He's going off the board as the QB 22, according to 4for4.com's multi-site ADP. No other Texans quarterback, those being Tyrod Taylor and Davis Mills, have an ADP according to 4for4. So they must be going undrafted in most one quarterback leagues, which makes sense. Superflex leagues or the Scott Fishbowl, they're obviously probably going to be drafted, even though probably later, but they will be drafted. Chris, what are we doing with the Texans quarterbacks?
So let's get this out, right? First and foremost, the elephant in the room is Deshaun Watson. Everyone wants him to play. Everyone hopes he's going to play. Everyone who drafted him hopes that he's going to play, because if he plays, he's a top 5 quarterback. No doubt in my mind.
QB 22.
Right. Fair enough. Okay. Fair enough. But here's the deal. He's like one of the highest profile characters in the NFL. This is a huge player misconduct. Whether it's true or not, he's going to be investigated. With the looming shadow of what happened with Washington, this just has to be investigated. In my mind, he's put on the commissioner's exempt list to start the year off, and he might not even see the field this year. I'm not touching Deshaun Watson, even though he's my hometown quarterback. I can't do it. He's, maybe a late round value. I would let someone else take the risk on him. Go get Aaron Rodgers instead. That instead of Deshaun Watson, if you're going to take the risk on someone like that. And that's sad to say, but from a fantasy point, that's where I'm going. Like you mentioned, Davis Mills and Tyrod Taylor. We'll talk about Tyrod in a second. One guy is Brock Osweiler 2.0, Jeff Driscoll, blah, blah, blah. He's on the team too. Don't worry about him. Tyrod, though, man. Deshaun Watson probably will not start the season. This guy will, if Deshaun doesn't. Tyrod has seen MVP-esque moments. He was labeled the Konami code for Josh Allen. The dude is the bridgiest quarterback in the world. I mean, he's got more bridges than Chadwick Boseman. Rest in peace. Rest in peace, sir. Wakanda forever, right? The dude can bridge a quarterback. And like I mentioned earlier, guys that are a stand-up guy, guys that have faced adversity and come back from it. This dude needs to have a Disney Plus movie about him, because look, Tyrod, God, one of the best quarterbacks the Bills has ever seen, that labeled the Konami code and then cut for Josh Allen in the future. Cool. Goes to the Browns. Stars of Hard Knocks. You saw him in the car rolling up real quick. They love him there. He's a good guy. What happens? He gets concussion. Enter in the former Heisman winner, forget the keys. He has the keys to the Bud Light refrigerator, Baker Mayfield. and Baker takes off. Then he signs with possibly one of the best offensive lines and dump-off weapons that he's ever had in his career in the Chargers. And some Simpsons doctor comes in and punctures his lung, where he has this thing done to him almost every, like it's a routine for him. And this Dr. Nick comes in and punctures his lung. Enter in Herb God, Offensive Rookie of the Year. So what does this mean for my Houston Texans? I'm extremely excited yet again, because Tyrod's going to come in. He's going to play like 4 or 5 games, coach up Davis Mills, who was touted by analysts prior to the draft, and let Davis Mills come in here and just reign, right? Because Davis Mills, born in Hotlanta, Greater Atlantic Christian School Academy guy, 66 total touchdowns, 6,300 yards, selected as the 2017 U.S. All-American Bowl captain, a 5-star recruit, was number 1 in the 2017 class, commits to Stanford. And this kid is like, gotta love Blue Mountain State too. KJ Costello's backup gets hurt, right, against Washington, I think like 6 or 7 games into their season. This kid has to come off the bench and go up against an air raid Mike Leach offense and a hard-nosed, no-nonsense defense coached by the duo of Darcel and Rock. The dude goes out there to put up a school record of 504 yards. Finishes the season with 1960 yards, 11 touchdowns, and only 5 interceptions. Then in the COVID year of 2020, he comes out and puts up 129 for 1,500 yards, 7 touchdowns, and only 3 TDs. I absolutely love this kid. I think he's going to be the future of the Texans, along with your guy, Nico Collins. For me, Davis Mills, you're going to look at him on the waiver. So if you get, like a Lamar Jackson or someone like that in a 1 QB league, I wouldn't mind Davis Mills as a real late flyer in a deep league. But other than that, I really, like you mentioned, I don't think he has too much redraft value right off the bat. If you want to couple them together with Tyrod and Davis Mills, I'd say, let me send you a jersey.
Yeah, I'm just gonna bow out of the Houston quarterback situation.
Hey, I got to be optimistic, because if I don't, no one else will, John,
Well, hey, look, man, you don't always have to be as optimistic, right? Like maybe, I was a Jets fan. I mean, I am a Jets fan, but we had Adam Gase, and he sucked all the optimism.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah.
Hey, we're about to get to running backs, though, so let me be optimistic about Tyrod.
Okay, yeah. I mean, look, me personally, I can't get into Tyrod. I mean, you convinced me last year, and after 16 for 30, 208, no touchdowns, at least he didn't throw any interceptions, and then 10 carries for 37 yards, I'm out. I'm out. So I let you talk me into moving him up last year, and I did. So, hey, at least this year I have him ranked ahead of Deshaun Watson, which I didn't have last year. So
there you go.
I've got
baby steps.
I've got 37 quarterbacks ranked. Guess where I have Deshaun Watson?
38.
You're right, because Davis Mills isn't on this list, and so
boom, there we go. Put him on the board.
I would draft Davis Mills ahead of Deshaun Watson. No, I can't draft Deshaun Watson, dude. I can't. There's no way. I mean,
in my notes, he's the QB not for me.
Yeah, because he's not. It's either he doesn't play because of the legal troubles, or he doesn't play because he said he'd never play for the Texans again. And
either way, it's a bad situation. You don't want that karma on your fantasy football team. Go get Tim Tebow.
Yeah. Hey, that's for another show.
Oh, that's coming up.
Well, let's move on to the running backs like you talked about. David Johnson had a pretty good 2020, finishing as the RB15 in fantasy points per game, 15 PPR points per game. Phillip Lindsay signed with the Texans, though, coming off a disappointing season where he only played in 11 games with the Broncos, rushed for a career-low 502 yards. This was after starting his career with back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons, finished as the RB67 in fantasy points per game with just 6. And then there's Mark Ingram, who also signed with the Texans, coming off an absolutely terrible year, only played in 11 games, having a career low in rushing, 299 yards, to go along with just two rushing touchdowns for the Ravens after scoring 15 the year before. These guys are going off the board as RB36, RB52 and RB68 respectively. Chris, are you interested in any of these guys?
Of course, I'm interested in them. Am I going to draft them? Probably not. It's like the Texans are going zero wide or going zero running back right now. I mean, you look at the roster for running backs, the running back room, and you're like, okay, wow, there's a lot of okay. I've labeled these guys David Johnson, Philip Lindsay, Mark Ingram as 1A, 1B, 1C, Earth, Wind, Fire. Rex Burkhead is 1D. He's the and. Buddy Howe, Scotty Phillips, Dontrell Hillard is Body Ya. So September was playing in the background, and I was like, yep, that's perfect. There we go. David Johnson, he was drafted as the number one running back, like 3-4 years ago, obviously in a different offense, different scheme. He comes to the Texans, terrible offensive line. What are we going to do? We got Philip Lindsay, we have Mark Ingram, all these guys over 1,000-yard rushers, right? Rex Burkhead, a jack of all trades. He can do whatever you want him to do. It's one of those things where, like in fantasy football, right? If you're going 0 RB, let's target this backfield because one of these guys is going to eat. Who is it going to be week to week? You don't know. I'm going to avoid the and Body Ya. So Rex, Buddy, Scotty, Dontrell, you're probably not seeing my rosters or anyone's rosters for that matter. Mark Ingram, probably not unless I'm in like a 30, my roster's 30 deep. Philip Lindsay, David Johnson, I can kind of see if you're going zero running back, but I'm very scared of these guys. David Johnson would probably be my guy over Philip Lindsay. In Dynasty, probably Philip Lindsay over David Johnson, but it's close because they're both not very good, and I don't anticipate these guys being on the team in 2 or 3 years. So,
yeah, it's interesting because I think I agree with you to an extent, right? Like, I definitely agree with you with the fact that like every running back after Mark Ingram, well, after Philip Lindsay, like I don't want anything to do with. Like I want nothing to do with them. I honestly want nothing to do with this. I want nothing to do with this backfield. If we're being honest.
Yep.
David Johnson is okay because he'll catch passes. At least he'll be utilized that way. The Texans will be down. They don't have much at receiver, so it's going to be him probably catching passes. Philip Lindsay is not really that guy. He's never really been a guy to catch a lot of passes, but he's mostly a first and second down guy. And I don't know, right? I find myself a lot of times ending up with Philip Lindsay, especially in dynasty leagues like you talked about. In dynasty startups, Philip Lindsay goes so late. And to me, he's a talented back. I mean, if you look at his class was 2018. He was undrafted, but he was the only back that from that class that outperformed him was Saquon Barkley.
Right.
And so Philip Lindsay to me is a good value. He just had a bad year last year because he was dealing with some injuries, and the Broncos they're not really one of the smartest teams. I mean, they had Philip Lindsay and they went out and paid Melvin Gordon. Like, that's the opposite of, I don't know.
And then got Javonte in the draft. Like, what's going on?
So with Philip Lindsay to me just had an unfortunate, unlucky 2020. And so from a dynasty perspective, I'm definitely in because it doesn't cost anything to be in on Philip Lindsay.
Sure.
But from a redraft perspective, like you were saying, if you were going 0 RB and you need a running back late, Philip Lindsay definitely makes sense because he's one of those guys where you can have on your bench. And as this season starts, maybe 2-3 weeks, you could kind of see, okay, how many carries is he getting? Is he getting utilized? Is it a committee? And you can kind of decide, is he flex worthy? Is he not? And David Johnson hasn't always been the most durable throughout his career, so he's not that far away from being the number one guy in the backfield anyway. So, Chris, let's move on to the wide receiver position. And first guy I want to talk about, we'll get to the rest of the guys, but let's talk about this guy first. Brandon Cooks, man, was the wide receiver 17 in fantasy points per game in 2020. Had a really good year, especially after the suspension of Will Fuller. Finished with 81 catches, 1,150 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Finds himself probably far and away the best. I wrote down receiving option, but I might even go to say, as far as to say fantasy option, far and away the best fantasy option on the Houston Texans. And fantasy managers agree he's going off the board as the wide receiver 39. How do you value Brandon Cooks?
Higher than the wide receiver 39, but that's okay. You know, I had to be a little bit more excited about him than most. He is our truly only redraft fantasy option. Yep. If there's one guy on the Texans that you want to have, it's him. If you look at Scott Fishbowl statistics right now, the Texans are the lowest drafted team for players in the pool, and I'm assuming they're all coming from Brandon Cooks. Thank you, Brandon Cooks, for keeping us relevant, right? So, man, Brandon Cooks is he's super consistent, right? He's extremely smart as well. We'll get into his little backstory, but I mean, first you gotta acknowledge he's the former Biletnikoff Award winner, right? So the dude he's great. Now, we know that he's in the 99th percentile for speed, agility, and route participation. You know, he's extremely good. He works really hard. Now, why does he work really hard? Why is he really smart? Obviously, I live on Narrative Street, right? And my show, that's my thing. I live on Narrative Street because I want to know the backstories of why these guys work so hard. What makes them? What's their why? If you can find out someone's why, you know what they're working for, and you know that it's true and pure. Brandon Cooks, man, at the age of 6, lost his father to a heart attack. He was one of 3 siblings, and he rose to the male role model of the figure that his other 2 brothers needed. He went to a high school, right? And throughout his high school career, he was extremely good, extremely gifted, but he wanted to make sure that he was book smart as well. Academic All-American, and then went 141 for 2,500 yards and 28 touchdowns in high school. As a wide receiver, solely wide receiver. He played DB as well and had some interceptions, but solely a wide receiver. Then in college, right, he originally commits to UCLA, which is only 4.5 hours away from where his mother and brothers live. But ultimately, they decide as a family that he would make the trek with Coach Mike Riley to Oregon State, 8.5 hours away, because he liked it better there, right? It was going to be more for him. Right. In the 3 years that he was there at Oregon State, he put 222, 3,000 yards, and 24 touchdowns. He owns so many awards, right? Pac-12 leader, NCAA leader in receiving yards, first team All-American, the Hawaii Bowl championship, consensus All-American, obviously the Biletnikoff Award winner. But the dude just is super smart, right? And he's driven by family. And that's what I really like about some of these guys. When you draft these guys on your teams, you got to like some of these guys, right? Some of the guys that have done some things I can't have on my team. I've got a daughter. Can't do it. So Brandon Cooks is a guy that I will always value and have on my team. You know, he learned Sean Payton's schemes and playbook. He learned Bill Belichick's. He learned Sean McVay's. Those are top minds in the NFL, and he's learned those and exceeded in those offenses. Now he is with the Houston Texans and David Culley. Everyone says, you know, you look at Brandon Cooks' quarterbacks, and he's had really good quarterbacks, right? Well, great players utilize their quarterbacks. That was from Peter Howard today on Twitter. So shout out to Peter. Thank you for giving me that little snippet. And that's what Brandon Cooks is, right? He's a great player that utilizes the quarterback. Whoever's back there, he's going to catch the ball. If it's Terod, if it's Davis Mills, if it's Deshaun Watson, if it's Jeff Driscoll, it don't matter. He's going to get his. He's guaranteed volume, Mr. Consistent. And I want this guy on all of my fantasy teams as a wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside if Watson plays.
Yeah, no, definitely Brandon Cooks. I mean, we saw him take over for Will Fuller last year, and he's a guy that has had 1,000 yards in 5 out of the last 6 years with 4 different teams. He had done it 3 consecutive years with 3 different teams. So like you said, no matter the quarterback, he's played with different quarterbacks from Drew Brees to Tom Brady to Jared Goff. And how many times have we complained about, you know, Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp under Jared Goff, but here was a guy, Brandon Cooks, in 1 year with Jared Goff, 1,204 yards, or his first year with Jared Goff, I should say. But anyway.
That was also the year they went to the Super Bowl and then have not returned since Brandon Cooks left. Coincidence? Yeah. Maybe not.
Brandon Cooks definitely has a special place in my heart. He helped. I traded for him down the stretch of that year, and he helped me win a fantasy championship. So
there you go. That's at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? That's why we do this. It's not just to talk about things. It's so that we can win championships and people who listen can win as well.
Yeah, man. And I'm about the bag. I want
that's
the money. But let's talk about the other wide receivers on this team, man. I mean, you talked about Nico Collins off the top. I mean, we talked about him a little bit off the air. I don't even know who else is on this team.
Really outside, like Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, that's it. And those are really the only guys we really need to talk about. Brandon Cooks for redraft, Nico Collins for redraft purposes if you're in a deeper league, and then dynasty, you got to get this kid. He's going to be the featured guy here pretty soon. He's learning from essentially one of the Ryan Fitzpatricks of wide receivers, right? Brandon Cooks has been around. He's seen the best. He's played with the best. He's been to Super Bowls. Like, Nico Collins he's pedigree above the rest. John could do like a 45-minute segment on him because he's the one that first enlightened me about him way back when. And so that's when I started diving into Nico, and then the Texans drafted him right after, pairing him essentially with Davis Mills. And you see like the whole Joe Burrow, T. Higgins type thing. You draft the two guys the same class. They're going to stick together. They probably eat together. They probably have Christmas cards, things like that. So you got to like the camaraderie. You got to like that. So Nico Collins on your dynasty teams, go get him. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's short.
Nico Collins is a guy that definitely, like you said, was on my radar kind of early. I do have him in a few leagues. I mean, as the year picked up, and then obviously he gets that. I think it was 3rd round draft capital, or was it third? Was it 3rd round or 4th? I don't know. It was one of those two, but he got some pretty good draft capital. And after that, I was not getting Nico Collins because it just wasn't going to happen. I remember my brother actually sniped me in our dynasty league for Nico Collins, so I had cried about that to him privately.
I just got one of those moments where you're like, oh man, I gotta say something about this. And so John and I, when we first started, that's how like we knew each other. We got into a league together, a dynasty league, and we're in this league, and I've got Nico Collins, and our guy Dustin won't leave me alone about him. Like, Dustin, and he's given me a lot to think about. Like, it's not one of those things where I'm just like auto deny, but it's like, by the way, in this league, I'm doing terrible in it. So, when you do bad, you got to own up to it. Because when you do well, we do the victory last. But when you do bad, you got to say, yeah, I'm getting my butt handed to me in that league. So maybe I should trade Nico.
Hey, maybe. I mean, Dustin sending me trade offers like every day, man. I don't feel too bad in that league because I suffered from some quarterback injuries last year that set me back a little bit.
I don't want to talk about quarterback injuries because I traded up. I traded away future capital for Drew Brees, okay? So.
Oh, yeah, no. You have retirement issues. I was dealing with Sam Darnold and Jared Goff last year. I did inject Zach Wilson into the lineup. But I'm sitting here with, like, Michael Thomas, Brandon Ayuk, Justin Jefferson. I've got all these receivers. I've got receivers for days. So let's see. But this is a different podcast.
Yeah. We'll talk about that later.
Talk about that later. But anyway, talk about the tight ends, man. Jordan Akins, he's the leader in ADP for the Texans at the tight end position with an ADP of tight end 39. Again, it's not sweet on this when we talk about these Texans, but he was the tight end 25 in total fantasy points last year, averaging 6.4 fantasy points per game. Where are we at with Jordan Akins, Chris?
Auto streamer for me. I'm not drafting him. I'm not targeting him in any drafts. If he's on the waiver wire and I need him, I'll scoop him up just because he's a Houston Texan. But I mean, he was phenomenal last year. Not phenomenal. I'm sorry. He played well with Deshaun Watson, and he seemed to be Deshaun Watson's like red zone guy last season. Obviously no nuke, so no run game. Deshaun can't do it all himself. I mean, his eyeball was out of his socket for a quarter. So Akins did well. And so streamer for me, the guy that I want to talk about, though, is Brevin Jordan. I think he's going to be the tight end one, right? In Dynasty, obviously, go get him. In redraft, I could take a shot on him, right? Tight end is a very barren landscape right now, after the big three, and then you got your Andrews, Hawkinson, whoever else, Cole Kmet if you're Chris Pinto, but whatever.
How could you not talk about Kyle Pitts? Did you not know this is a Kyle Pitts fanboy podcast?
Look, I don't want to talk about Kyle Pitts because I'm not a Kyle Pitts fanboy.
Oh, Chris, sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening.
The friendship is over. Later. No, it's just, we'll talk. Look, Kyle Pitts for me, I get it, right? I get it. But since Jeremy Shockey, no rookie tight end has come into the league and gone over 1,000 yards. I get it. But I'm just gonna go like everyone's on Kyle Pitts, so I'll be the bad guy, because if I'm right, then I'm right. If I'm wrong, cool, y'all are all right. Not awesome. But back to Brevin Jordan, right? Real quick. Brevin Jordan, his measurables are good too. Spent draft capital on him. I think that he's like the future of the team, right? Nico Collins, Brevin Jordan, Davis Mills, they will all work together. They will all build this offense up to be what it will be. At the U, right? Brevin Jordan posted 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, and ACC all honors. So the kid's no slouch. Man. I feel like I'm ESPN right now. Like every time you start talking about, or like the draft, every time you talk about something good, like you remember something sad, music plays and Sarah McLachlan comes on, because Brevin Jordan did have a hardship, right? He came to the U as a committed freshman, true redshirt freshman, posted adequate numbers at 32 catches for 287 and 4, right? That spring on February 10th, his father passed away, and Brevin decided to dedicate his rest of his career to his father. Brevin's dad was drafted by the Atlanta Falcons as a linebacker back in the day, but never saw the field because he tore his rotator cuff. So right there, and never ascended, right? Brevin took that on him and said, look, this is for my dad, this is for my family. He comes back to the U, posts ACC all honors, and goes 73 for over 1,009 in the final 2 years. Gets drafted by the Texans. If you think that this kid is going to get outworked by anybody or not be the day one starter in this tight end room, you're sadly mistaken. Brevin Jordan is going to be the next phenom for the Houston Texans.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it here first. Brevin Jordan, next phenom for the Houston Texans.
It's not going to be hard, though. Remember that.
No, I can't. Who's the best tight end in the Texans? Owen Daniels?
Owen Daniels. Golly, that's an old name, man. Jeez. I want to. Ben Watson? Ben Watson won a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Did he win it with the Texans?
I mean, like the Patriots, so it's almost like the Texans, right? The Texans are like the farm club for the Patriots.
Yeah, right. Texans, Patriots,
even the staff.
All right, Chris, I gotta ask you one last question, man, before I let you go. Who's winning the AFC South, and where are the Texans finishing?
Oh, baby, we're taking the mold from the Jacksonville Jaguars. We're coming in last in the division. We're going to get that high draft. Well, I have to look at our draft capital because I don't even know what we've traded away for next season. But that's besides the point. We will finish last, dead last in the AFC South. The AFC South will be won by Ryan Tannehill, Texas A&M Aggie, and the Tennessee Titans with Derrick Henry, Julio Jones, and AJB. That's who's taking the AFC South. I can't see anyone else doing it.
Yeah, man, I gotta check to see because it's got to be close between the Colts and the Titans, depending on how you feel about
Darius Leonard and that defense. Though were sick.
No, that's
the Colts.
Yeah, they're definitely sick. I have the Colts winning the AFC South by about half a game.
Don't tell Billy I said that. He'll have to listen.
I'm just gonna play this clip for him on repeat for the entirety, and that will be the podcast with Billy.
Billy just be eating popcorn, watching, drinking a beer, recording it on his phone, sending it to me in our group text.
Oh man! All right, Chris, man. We almost gave the listeners what they wanted or what they didn't want in an hour-long podcast about the Houston Texans. How sad could that be to make an hour-long podcast about the Houston Texans? Anyway.
Hopefully it wasn't that sad. Hopefully if you tuned into the Houston Texans, you had a little bit of good time. You laughed, you cried, you got the emotions out a little bit, a little therapy.
No, of course, man. Look, anytime with Chris Pinto is a good time, and me and Chris Pinto, that's a great time. So
yes, sir.
Look, everybody out there, make sure you are playing in the St. Jude Bowl. Last year, Greg and I, we co-managed a team, made it to the playoffs, ended up getting knocked out. We had to deal with some injuries and just wasn't fun. But we had Herb, and we were riding that arm for a little bit. But we're definitely going back at it again. We have to try to take this thing down. Just in the name of fantasy football diagnostics, we have to do it because, like you said, we all want the bag. We all want to win. and there's cash involved here. But obviously, you got to do a great thing for the children at St. Jude. So why not, to kill two birds with one stone here? So, Chris, anything else you want to plug? Where can people find you? What do you got going? Because I know you got a lot going on, man. I share your content. You got a lot going on. So why don't you let everybody know what's up, man?
For sure. First, everybody, if you're listening, obviously you follow John. Make sure you follow him, man. And if you're listening because you're tuning in because of me, the 3 new people that are listening to this, go follow John. Please go follow John. Dude is a cut above the rest. He works hard. He grinds hard. I get a lot of my information from John too. We talk a little bit every now and then, and when I do, I always come away with something. So like the 3 people that are following me from the Fantasy First Rounders Live, click the button for John. Guys, if you're not following me, because I'm going to take you from John's viewing, so that like the 3 million people now that are watching, guys, hi, my name is Chris Pinto. You can follow me on Twitter at Aggie Kappa Sig. Man, I host a show called the Fantasy First Rounders Live. We're live every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We're Central because I'm from Texas, obviously. Every Wednesday, man, we do about 2 hours. There's 4 of us, Ryan, Tom, Billy, and myself. We have a great time. We put in a lot of hours, so you don't have to. That's our shtick. Like, we're going to put in 24 hours and give it to you in 2. Learn from us. Let's go win some ships. Stats win ships. Like John said, man, I'm working on a couple things behind the scenes over at Expand the Box Score. Shout out to Andy Singleton. IDP stuff. IDP is getting big in the community. A lot of people are liking, like I mentioned, Darius Leonard, Buda Baker's my guy, Micah Parsons. These guys right here. You add them into your fantasy home leagues, right? Spice it up a little bit and come over to Expand the Box Score. Check that out. And at the beginning of the show, John mentioned FTN Data, right? I'm going to do some charting for them. FTN Data has something coming out. We just shared it out on Twitter today. It's a new FTN Data website, right? It has more charting points than anything that's ever been out before. So come check that out if you're a big analyst guy, big nut, big about numbers. Come check that out over at FTN Data. And then, yeah, I mean, that's my projections. Those are going well. Hopefully I can call the next Super Bowl winner. Last year it was pretty cool calling Tom Brady to win, and they won. So maybe I go 2 for 2 this year. Other than that, guys, not too much. You can hit me up on my DMs, whatever, that kind of stuff. I'm pretty easy to talk to. That's about it. John, you got to cut me off because I'm kind of like this right now. I'm just kind of going.
Well, make sure you go follow Chris at Aggie Kappa Sig. See, it took me a year, but I said it right this time.
Remember I said JR football nerd, right?
Oh, junior football nerd.
Junior football nerd. There we go.
That's the one. But it's cool because in my head it's like, oh, everyone should just read that as JR, but nope, it's read as junior. So everyone, make sure you go follow Chris. He was so kind. Said I had 3 million. There's more like you had it reversed, Chris. There's my 3 listeners that are gonna go now follow you, and your 3 million viewers that follow you. I'm gaining them. So everyone, we appreciate y'all. Hope that you had fun with us, rocking with us tonight for this segment about the Houston Texans. Look, we made it fun. You didn't have to sit here through a boring old segment about the Houston Texans. We had some fun, and we're gonna have some more fun tomorrow as we talk about the Indianapolis Colts. So everyone, we appreciate y'all, and we will catch y'all later. Peace.